All right, let's get into it. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most legendary and, let's be honest, most scandalous stories in the history of sports, the secret party house of the 90s Dallas Cowboys. So let's just start with this gem from Hall of Fame running back Emmitt Smith. When a reporter asked him about a certain house in Irving, Texas, that was his answer. I mean, come on, that tells you everything you need to know. The story is so wild that even decades later, the guys who were there are still scared to talk about it.
And that's the big question, right? What really went down inside this so-called White House? Because look, this wasn't just some house. It was the absolute epicenter for a team at the peak of its powers, a team that was basically living by a whole different set of rules. It's a story of fame, freedom, and of course the chaos that was bound to follow. Okay, first up, dynasty, discipline, and division. To really get how the White House was even possible, you have to understand the massive shift in coaching that happened right in the middle of this team's championship dynasty.
3. That's how many Super Bowls the Dallas Cowboys won in 4 years during the early 90s. They were, without a doubt, on top of the world. They were America's team, a true powerhouse stacked with future Hall of Famers. And in the kind of Wild West culture of the NFL back then, yeah, they were basically unstoppable.
So here is the absolute turning point. After winning 2 of those Super Bowls, the guy who built the whole thing, Coach Jimmy Johnson, a man famous for his military-style discipline and keeping a tight rein on his players, was out. And his replacement? Barry Switzer, a coach whose philosophy was, well, the exact opposite.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Their star quarterback, Troy Aikman, said it himself. The change was instant, and it was huge. All that intense accountability they had under Johnson, it just vanished. A new era of freedom had begun. And this shift, it created the perfect conditions for something like the White House to even exist.
Which brings us right here. Welcome to the White House. This newfound freedom, it led the players to create their own secret headquarters for, let's call them off-the-field activities.
So the players, led by star wide receiver Michael Irvin, decided they needed a private place to unwind. And they found the perfect spot, a 2-story house on Dorset Drive. But here's the most audacious part. It was directly across the street from the team's official practice facility. You could literally see one from the other. The nerve!
Now, according to Michael Irvin, the self-proclaimed president of the White House, the whole thing started with good intentions. He said he wanted to avoid all the trouble that comes with partying in public hotels. He was just trying to create a safe place for team bonding. But that safe place would quickly become infamous for a whole lot more than just camaraderie. And that leads us to our next section: sex, drugs, and Super Bowls. Because what started out as a space for camaraderie just spiraled into a full-blown legend of unchecked debauchery. The stories that eventually came out of that house, they're just insane. We're talking non-stop parties fueled by tons of alcohol and rampant drug use, everything from marijuana to cocaine. It was a place where pretty much any vice you can think of was not only available, but openly encouraged. It was operating completely outside the rules of the team and totally hidden from public view. And just listen to Irvin describing it himself. He paints this picture of organized chaos, not just a messy free-for-all. A 5-room party house where you could just choose your vice, room by room. He said you could just bounce around. It was like a buffet of bad decisions, and everyone was invited to sample a bit of everything.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth did this continue? Well, this quote from Coach Switzer tells you everything. He knew, but his whole philosophy was simple. They're adults, what they do on their own time is their business. That hands-off approach was basically a giant green light for the players to keep the party going no matter how crazy it got.
Which of course brings us to the final chapter, the inevitable fallout. A secret this explosive was never going to last forever, and when it all came crashing down, it was just as dramatic as the parties themselves.
The first sign of trouble actually came from inside the team. Teammate Leon Lett went to Irvin and warned him, saying their secret was out. But Irvin, who was at the peak of his powers and probably felt untouchable, just laughed it off. He literally told Lett, "This is not a movie." He just couldn't imagine his world coming down around him.
But then it happened. The story broke. And when owner Jerry Jones finally confronted Irvin, Irvin gave what might be the most audacious, legendary response of all time. He didn't deny it. He just said, "Boss, I was trying to do the wrong thing the right way." That answer just perfectly captures the swagger of that entire era. The consequences hit hard and fast. Irvin was arrested, and the scandal exposed everything.
He had to go through a public drug trial that was an absolute media circus. The NFL suspended him for 5 games, and in a really telling moment, of all his so-called brothers from the White House, only one person, Troy Aikman, actually showed up to court to support him. The party was officially over.
And this whole wild saga leaves us with one last question. I mean, think about it. In today's world, with camera phones in every pocket, Ring doorbells everywhere, and social media that can expose anything in an instant, could a secret like the Cowboys White House ever even exist? Or was this just a unique product of a totally different era of sports, fame, and secrecy? It's something to think about.